excepción, con Jeff Bullwinkel, vicepresidente y consejero general adjunto de Asuntos Corporativos, Externos y Legales de Microsoft EMEA, una empresa que obviamente no necesita presentación. And welcome, Jeff, to Wake Up Spain. It's a pleasure for us having you here in Madrid.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here. Always great to be here in Spain, in Madrid.
A great fan of Spain.
I would say my favorite city, my favorite country in Europe. So, absolutely.
Una buena manera de empezar la entrevista. We have short on time, so let's go to start that interesting conversation. First of all, Jeff, Microsoft has positioned AI as fundamental to the future economy. What are the key elements necessary to build an inclusive AI-driven?
I guess I might start by saying trust is sort of fundamental. I mean, people really need to trust technology before they'll use that technology. And so we think about that a lot at Microsoft as a company that is these days involved in developing and deploying these advanced generative artificial intelligence solutions. Trust really is key. And so, in fact, we already almost 10 years ago, focused on the importance of responsible, ethical AI, and we published a set of principles in a book called The Future Computed that was really all about privacy and security, safety and reliability, inclusion, fairness, mitigating bias in AI systems, transparency, accountability, these kinds of things that for us reflected key elements that would govern our own behaviors as a technology company. So in a way, it's a form of self-regulation, but ultimately, we also need clear rules for adoption, clarity of what the rules are, ideally rules that will enable tech adoption as well, and that's really fundamental. And to be very clear, as a company, we recognize just how important regulation can be. So it's the second thing I would say. The third thing I would say, of course, is skills. All of us are in this new world of AI, and it seems hard to believe that just over 2 years ago was when we first had ChatGPT unleashed on the world, and ultimately Microsoft Copilot and other solutions. And the world has really changed since that time. But skilling, how to use these solutions effectively, is fundamental. And as a company, we're also very focused on our opportunity and responsibility there. I mean, here in Spain, we've committed to train 1 million citizens, even in this calendar year. So that certainly is key. And the final thing I would say really is a mindset shift. I mean, all of us, I think, felt before we began using these solutions that we were pretty productive, pretty efficient in the work that we were doing. And so to actually think about embracing these technologies in a meaningful way does require all of us to rethink the way in which we ideate, how we create ideas, how we create content, how we integrate this into our everyday lives. And that does, for all of us, I think, require a real shift in mindset.
Obviously, we have to speak about Spain. How can AI help address Spain's critical challenges? I mean, job creation, productivity stagnation, aging population.
Pues otra vez, también me encanta España, so I'll say that to begin with. I wish I could say all of this in Spanish, but I would say a couple of things about this. And you talk about the aging population, which is a fundamental challenge for Spain, for many countries, frankly, most countries across Europe, for many countries in Asia. Certainly think about Korea, Japan, China, for the United States as well. And here in Spain, already, you have roughly 20% of the population over the age of 65. And in about 10 years' time, that will jump to about 28% of the population. And so I think it's critical for Spain, for other countries in Europe, to make sure that we're able to address that challenge through more effective technologies that will ultimately allow us to automate jobs and allow human beings to focus on what they really do best, creative problem solving, empathy, collaboration, those kinds of things. So that really is critical. But beyond that, I'd also comment that we are seeing a very exciting development of a new AI economy, a new technology stack, if you will. And you think about generative AI these days as another type of general purpose technology. That is, a technology that can be effective if it is effectively integrated through every different aspect of the economy. And once it's done that, you see this stack, starting with the infrastructure layer. So data centers, which we are involved in building as a company here in Spain, land and power to power these data centers. And you then have the model layer. So you think about large language models, small language models, and innovation happening within that layer, and ultimately, of course, the application layer as well. And as you have this economy develop, we're seeing an explosion of new companies, including here in Spain, and that will ultimately also create some opportunities for this country that are very exciting, we think.
You're talking about EA infrastructure is the future, is the main thing now.
Yeah.
What are the main challenges we face in successfully adopting this technology?
Well, I think I would just emphasize that infrastructure is a critical element of this. And we have been investing in infrastructure in Spain and across Europe for many years now. As a company, by the way, we turned 50 years old a week from Friday. So April 4th, Microsoft turns 50. We've been in many markets in Europe, including here in Spain, for roughly 40 years, and investing along the way very significantly. And so that's allowed us to do a couple of things that we think are important, and our customers, our partners, government officials tell us these things are in fact important. One is actually being able to make sure we are hosting and processing, storing our customers' data within the European Union. And in fact, we as a company a couple of years ago undertook an investment to essentially make a commitment that we will be able to process and store customer data within the EU. And that's not something that, by the way, is required by law. As I'm sure many people here watching realize, the GDPR does not require that. But we also felt that was something that our customers were wanting us to invest in and to do, and it, I think, creates a different level of control. So we had that infrastructure and have for years, but on top of that, we're investing very heavily now in infrastructure to run these powerful AI models with advanced GPUs, and that includes major investments here in Spain. In fact, last year we invested an announcement of over $2 billion in new state-of-the-art infrastructure here in Spain as a part of a series of announcements elsewhere across Europe. And if you look at those announcements across Europe, you'll see that we committed to invest over $20 billion in this infrastructure just over the past 16 months. So that's a very exciting thing for us and reflects what is, again, for us, a decades-long commitment to Europe, and also, I think, an interdependence that we feel as we invest in these communities and employ people and, again, grow together, if you will.
Let's talk now about the strategic competition will be a key challenge the next years. What role does Microsoft play?
Yeah, well, we certainly are very focused on this, and perhaps the best summary of how we think about that you can find in something we call our AI access principles. And in fact, it was here in Spain, in Barcelona, about a year ago at the last Mobile World Congress that Microsoft's Vice Chair and President Brad Smith announced and wrote about these AI access principles that really can be summarized in 3 words. One, of course, is access. Making sure that we as a company, as a provider, as a hoster of these models, are providing, broadly speaking, access to people who can use them, for sure. Second is really fairness, making sure that once we are providing access to these technologies, that we are in fact treating everyone in a fair, even-handed manner, which is not for us as a company hard philosophically, because we are now and always have been fundamentally a platform company on which other companies can build and innovate and succeed. And the third of these access principles really can be summarized in the word responsibility. That is, making sure that we as a company really appreciate the responsibilities that come with the role that we occupy as well. So that includes, to be sure, our focus on responsible, ethical AI, on data security, on data privacy, on skilling, and making sure we are, again, making good on that commitment to skilling. And by the way, we have recently open-sourced, if you will, a fair amount of content on skilling. And if you do a search for Microsoft AI Skills Navigator, you'll find a lot of free content that's organized by role, so what kind of job you might have in your organization, and by subject area as well. And so more and more of content like this will be made available, we hope, in a way that's beneficial to communities here in Spain and elsewhere around the world.
You mentioned a big word here in Europe, regulation.
Yeah.
How does Microsoft contribute?
Well, first thing I would emphasize, perhaps this is not something you expect to hear always from a large technology company, but we really recognize that regulation is not just appropriate, but overdue. in many cases. For years, we were calling for a unified privacy regulation. We got that in the GDPR. And that, for us, was a great day. And in fact, at that point, the GDPR was fully effective. We announced that we would apply its protections to citizens of the world, and not just citizens of the EU. I mean, it was setting a high bar for us that we would want to meet, for sure, globally to create trust. Equally, we think about the importance of making sure that AI is regulated in the right way. And, one metaphor maybe I'd offer up in thinking about this is to say that all of us go to the store these days, and, you're shopping for milk. And you go to the milk section, and it's so complicated because you have so many kinds of milk. You have full-fat milk and semi-skim milk and low-fat milk and almond milk and coconut milk and lactose-free milk and all these kinds of milk. And the one question that does not occur to anybody is which one of these milks is safe. They're all safe. They're all safe because they're regulated. So as we think about AI, which is going to be, we believe, one of the most powerful tools, if you will, technology tools of our time, we recognize that it could also be a very powerful weapon. And so indeed, there does need to be a level of regulation. And the philosophy underlying the AI Act is something that we certainly recognize as helpful as well. The notion of having a risk-based approach where you have no or little regulation for minimal risk and more regulation, of course, as you go up the risk ladder. At the same time, I think we're also increasingly focused these days on the need for there to be a level of interoperability across legislative regimes. We're seeing not just activities, of course, in the EU, we're seeing activities at the member state level in other countries around the world, in Japan, in India, in individual states within the United States. And so as a company that is working hard to develop and deploy these technologies at scale, and also serving customers and partners who themselves are trying to operate globally at scale, making sure there is a cohesive, interoperable framework is a helpful thing. And we've seen some great work along those lines done at the OECD, in the Group of Seven, and at the multilateral level more generally, and that's a great thing to see. And I think you're also seeing, by the way, an effort here in Europe to think about whether or not the current framework can be further streamlined and simplified in a way that's going to create the right level of clarity, as well as an enabling environment for AI adoption, which I think people recognize is so fundamental, while at the same time making sure you have in place as well the right guardrails to protect all of us, and that's critical as well.
Thank you. Briefly, a little advice for the Spanish companies?
Well, what I would say, in some cases, people think about the need to learn before leaping into these new technologies, and I guess I might suggest that it's important to leap in order to learn as well, and really just changing the way we operate and starting really from top to bottom in any organization is going to be key. So I think any company here in Spain and across Europe, we would certainly recommend that you embrace technologies and think about how they can really remake the way you do business, and also that you empower your own people with the right tools as well and skill them as well so they can be using them effectively. Because frankly speaking, I think most people recognize that if you don't provide AI tools for your employees, they'll bring their own. You have a shadow IT situation, which I think nobody wants to see. And so our hope is that people do think about this in that way. It's happening, by the way, in Spain. Spain is ahead of the rest of Europe, by the way, when it comes to AI adoption, which is very exciting. Lagging behind when it comes to cloud adoption. So that's one thing. It also emphasizes the need to start with that fundamental embrace of cloud computing as well.
We are out of time. Thank you for joining us at Wake Up Spain. It's a pleasure to listen to your thoughts, and I look forward to meeting you another time. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Y a ustedes les emplazo a que sigan disfrutando del Foro Económico El Español con nuevas e interesantes conversaciones. Gracias.